She has over 7 years, I believe, of recovery. And she's also now working with Mrs. Wilson's House, which is a sober living home for women who are recovering from addiction and co-occurring disorders. So talk about someone that puts their effort where their mouth is. So let's all give a warm welcome for Sarah, and I'm really excited to hear you. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Brad. Can you hear me? Okay, and thank you, Daph, and thank you, everyone, for having me here tonight. I'm very humbled and I'm really excited. I always feel so grateful for the opportunity to just do service work. I came into the program very of AA, lost, um, just completely depleted of all spiritual, psychological, emotional, anything. And so many people held my hand and held me up, and they saved my life. And now the rest of my life, I plan to continue to give back to the community that helped me to get sober. 8.5 years ago, actually, I found AA in May of 2012, but it's one day at a time. And so I'm just so grateful. Sometimes when I do speaker meetings, it's baffling to me because I often don't recognize the person I was before I got sober. And this may be something that people can identify with because we change so much. I know for me, I needed the program of AA to really seriously address my alcoholism and the everything that was underneath causing me to drink. Peeling those layers of the onion. Um, I started drinking at 14 and I fell in love with the feeling of it. It just melted away anxiety. It melted away how I just felt so uncomfortable in my own skin. I got very sick the night that I first drank, and I woke up the next morning exhilarated. There was friends who were at the same party as I was, and they thought, oh gosh, this is awful. And I just fell in love. I fell in love because I found my partner, my life partner, and we would forge on in life together. And with this legal drug, I would be able to get through hard times and enjoy occasions even more and feel more comfortable in my skin. I was a very sensitive person with undiagnosed depression and anxiety, so which I didn't know about. And I also have a history of sexual abuse when I was real little. So I just, when 14 years of age came along and I had the opportunity to put that magic elixir into my body, really, it helped me to forget. And that's the only way I really knew how to cope with anything. So we went on in life doing what I felt was expected of me. And so I went to high school, I graduated high school, and I went to college, and I joined a sorority, and I drank a lot. And over the 4 years, I got involved with very dysfunctional relationships with men, and just trying to fill that hole, that hole of loneliness and feeling like I was not worth much at all. And um, I didn't realize that all the problems that I was having in my life really were amplified because of my drinking. I never made that correlation. I just didn't think it had anything to do with my drinking because I just thought, I just knew drinking would be with me forever. But I had a really, really chaotic life. And when I mean chaotic, I don't mean just what was going on outside of me, like dysfunctional relationships. And I had girlfriends that were not really nice to me, and I would catch them talking poorly about me behind my back. And I was so sensitive, and I would just get filled with self-pity. And but I had a lot of internal ugliness going on. And I really thought that I was a burden to this world. Like I just, the messages that I was getting from, I hate to, I have come a long way and with the steps in the program, and I have forgiven many people and I've made amends to many people. And so my family relationships have healed greatly. And my parents did the best they could, but it was a family where we didn't really know how to cope with things. And um, I played the role of kind of just withdrawing and making sure I did everything right, but I can't do anything too well because that would be upsetting for my older brother. And that's how I experienced our family. And so I just didn't want to be a burden. That's how that was the belief that I carried with me. So I didn't really think much of myself, I searched for love, because I just was desperate to feel love. So I looked for it in relationships with men, and they were never successful. I just didn't know how to have a normal relationship. And usually the men that I was in relationships with were abusive. I would need to get restraining orders, but they would get me alcohol, especially when I was not of age. That was very convenient for me. But I would manipulate them, with my sex powers, and I would, it was just all a mess. And the men I dated weren't too nice to me because I didn't really like myself at all. I actually, I hated myself. And I didn't realize how much I hated myself until I got sober and started to work on some important issues. So what I love to share is how um, I got sober, and I love to focus more on the recovery part because I have been having an incredible experience in sobriety through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have had such profound spiritual awakenings. And my connection with God is so unbelievable that I just wake up every morning and I thank God for waking me every morning, because I spent much of my life very resentful at God for not taking me in my sleep. And, I just was, at the low, I was just living a very low self-esteem life. And um, what I love to share about is how God was always with me, and I didn't know it. But I look back and I know God wanted to keep me here on earth. And there was a night a random Monday night that I got extremely drunk, like I normally did. The last 2 years of my drinking career, I drank every day, nearly around the clock. This is while I was raising and still am raising 3 sons, 2 of whom have autism, and they're now teenagers. So that's why nobody's running into my room right now. And I had a dream on the morning of May 8th, 2012. And it was a very long dream. And I wrote about it in a blog that I had started a couple years ago, but since disbanded. And the dream was a very long dream. And it was a dream of just chaos. I was trying to get to a job, and I was being led in all different directions and going on the off ramp and off the on ramp. And the more I was driving to get to this job in the dream, the more I got lost. And I was led onto this dirt pathway, and it led me to this big building that was under construction. And I was led up to walk up to the top of the building, and I was led into this glass elevator. And at the top of the elevator, at the top of the building, I was in this glass container, and there were people all around me looking at me, and it was all glass. So everyone could see me. Everyone was watching me. And somebody outside of the glass elevator pushed this button, and I started to go down. And I started to just go down, down, down very slowly. And then I felt a coolness on my feet. And I looked down and I noticed liquid pooling around my feet. And as I lowered down, the liquid continued to come up, and to the point where, as I got to the very bottom, I was completely submerged in this vat of liquid. And I woke up gasping for air because I was literally holding my breath in my dream. And that was the morning that I heard God speaking to me that I was drowning myself in alcohol. And that dream couldn't have been more literal. And I walked into my youngest son's bedroom, and he was around 3 or 4 at the time. And he just looked at me and he said, "Hi, mommy." And he was so cheerful. He had no idea like what I was experiencing and what I'd been carrying for years and years and years. And that was the moment when I realized that I needed, I was just, I was just done. I was completely exhausted. It was like I was tired of fighting, because for so many years I tried to control my drinking. I didn't want to let go of my drinking. It was the only way I knew how to cope. So I literally was terrified because I had this thought of, this is the end, but how am I going to do it without drinking? How am I going to live life without drinking? But I looked at my son, my youngest son, and he had just been diagnosed with, my second son to be diagnosed with autism. And I thought, what am I doing to him? What am I doing to my son, other sons? What am I doing to my husband? And what am I doing to myself? And at that moment, this popped into my head, and I feel it was from God. It said, Google local AA meetings. Never in my life had I ever thought that I would go to AA. Like, that was for the lowest of lows, like the people, like the bums on the street in New York City that I would see when we go see Broadway shows, and they're drinking out of paper bags. So to have that thought come into my mind, I was surprised, but what was incredible is that I had this immediate sense of relief. And it was like my shoulders just kind of relaxed. I was still in the throes of a huge hangover, but I felt this relief that was, I can only compare it to that relief I felt when I had my first drunk at 14. But it was a different kind of relief. It was a healthy relief because I was letting go. I was starting to let my control over to my God. And I didn't know that that was happening. So I went to my first AA meeting, and I cried the entire time because everyone was speaking my language. And I felt I was home. And at 39 years old, I thought my life was over. And that night, it was actually 8 o'clock at night on a Wednesday. And it was all men there. And I thought it was and they were all biker dudes with like tattoos and everything. And they were all smoking outside. And I thought, is this a men's meeting? And they said, no, 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 no. And they knew, and they said, come on in, come on in. And I learned later that a couple of the guys were calling some women. And then I learned they couldn't get the women to come. But another miracle that occurred was the last 10 minutes of the meeting. A woman came just barreling through and sat down right next to me. And she had 30 years sobriety and had never been to that meeting. She was not one of the women that was called. She had missed her regular meeting, So she went to that meeting, which was my first meeting, and she was on me like white on rice and became my temporary sponsor. And she said, just go to, keep doing what I'm doing. Let's get together. Let's talk. I went to meetings every day. I was in a fog, but she just kept calling me and telling me what to do. And I kept calling her and doing what she said. And I kept hearing, do the steps, do the steps. So I kept asking her, can we do the steps? And I don't know what happened. We just didn't really get around. Like it just didn't happen. She was busy. I was busy. I had 3 kids trying to get like childcare for my kids. I don't know what happened. I had a one night relapse, which blew my mind. And I drank a 6-pack, that my husband's beer. And he's not an alcoholic. So that 6-pack would always sit in that refrigerator for 3 months while I would just keep refilling my wine bottles every night with water, and stick them in the way back, and then the empties would go in the bottom of the recycling bin real quietly, you know. And I had that relapse. I didn't know. And I said to Maureen, I don't know what happened. She said, it was a slip. Just come back, come back, come back. I said, okay. So I went back the next day. I was so ashamed because I was like, wait, I want this now. And I'm feeling better. And I'm not having hangovers. And everyone's telling me that it's a better life. Why did I slip? What happened? I didn't get it. So I kept saying, people keep saying, do the steps, do the steps. So my temporary sponsor was having a lot of her own problems at the time. And and it's not her fault. It's just this is the way it was supposed to happen. And I had another relapse on August 19th, 2012. And that night, my husband was going to leave me. And he was going to leave me with my children at 2:00 in the morning. He was getting my children out of the bed. And he was going to leave me. And I begged him, please just give me one more chance. And he did. The next morning, I went to a 6:30 meeting, and I literally crawled into that meeting on my hands and knees, begging for someone to help me because I did not want to drink anymore, and I didn't understand. I didn't understand why I had those 2 slips. How is that possible? And I found a sponsor who immediately started working the steps with me. And we did a 4th step. And I ended up going to therapy. And I did some serious outside therapy. I worked very hard with my sponsor. And we did do some amends, but it wasn't super thorough. But it was enough because I had not yet divulged the big secret of the sexual abuse. That came a few months later, and that was like a volcano that erupted. And my husband wanted to institutionalize me, and we were going to put all of our, we had some things that we wanted to do to make our home a little bit, we live in a very small home, and we have 3 kids and a dog, and we wanted to make it a little bit bigger. And he wanted to use all the money that we've been saving to put me into a rehab. And I said, no, I'm not going to let the abuse that occurred for me really effed me up a lot in terms of, my relationship with my sexuality, with what, intimacy meant. It was all messed up. I just didn't know how to be in healthy relationships. So I felt like that my abuser had stolen that from me. And I said, he's not going to steal anything more from me. So I promise I'm going to get into hardcore, therapy. And I went like 3 or 4 times a week, and I saw a therapist so we could use the money to make this house a home for our children. And I spent the next 3 years really working hard on the issues of abuse. I had to see a psychiatrist because of the undiagnosed depression. At this point, I had many years sober. Well, not many, but it felt like many. 3 years felt like so long. And, I had enough clean time for the psychiatrist to work with me and say, you do have pretty significant depression and anxiety. So I do take medication, and I've been taking it as prescribed since 2014 or 15, while I've been working the program of AA. And so so life continued. I was feeling better. I was really and so involved in AA, and I was actively engaging, and I was speaking at rehabs. I was going to detoxes constantly. Like my life was AA. My life was AA. And if I wasn't doing AA stuff, if I wasn't, making coffee, if I wasn't, leading meetings, if I wasn't speaking, if I wasn't cleaning up, if I wasn't setting up, I was taking care of my children. And it took a while for my husband and I to kind of restore our marriage, but we had a really and it was, so we were kind of living together, separated, but we were civil with each other, and we've always loved each other, but we both needed to do a lot of healing, and there was a lot of stuff that we needed to get through on our own. And then I had what I call my Jesus dream. I'm Episcopalian, and I went to church every day my whole life. And I will tell you, I really never thought much of Jesus, to be honest with you. I just, there was a God. Okay, there's a God. I went and I did, went to church. But I had this dream, and it was like 2015 or 16. And in this dream, Jesus was my friend. We were in a show together. I met my husband in a musical, so it's fitting that we were in a musical and Jesus was my friend. We were all together, and we were having a break from practicing, and all of a sudden, announcements made that Jesus was killed. And I was devastated. I was sobbing. I was just, my heart was broken. And sorry, this is a very profound dream to me, and it served me in so many ways. And it's what's brought me very close to God and to Jesus. And I kept saying, where is Jesus? I need to see him. Where is he? Where is he? And I saw an ambulance outside of the where we were rehearsing, and the doors were open, and I knew he was in there. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to see him. So I ran into the ambulance, and I had to see, was he really dead? Was he really dead? No, my friend, my dear friend, I love him so much. Why is he dead? In the dream, I'm thinking, well, I can't believe how much I love Jesus. Like, I can't believe this. And so I see him laying there, and his arms are crossed, and he's in plain clothes, just like every one of us. And I thought, I have to go and I need to kiss him. I need to go and kiss him. And I went and I kissed him on the forehead. And I saw that he was holding a book, and I thought, oh, he must be the Bible. And I looked closer, and it was the big book. And I just wept. I wept. And I came out of the ambulance, and there was an announcement made. Somebody said, someone has stolen a page of Jesus's big book. We have to find this. And I was like appalled. I was like, this is outrageous. I cannot believe this. We have to find the page of his big book. Meanwhile, I had never, ever been taken through the big book. I'd only used the 12 and 12. My previous sponsor brought me through the big book, through the 12 and 12, but only up to step 4. So in this dream, here's the big book. Jesus has died. I am so upset. I find out it's been stolen. I discover that this reporter on site had stolen the page of the big book. And so I took the page and I returned it to the director, and I was quiet. I was like, I found it. It was stolen. It was stolen. I have found it. We can give it back to Jesus. We can bury him with it. This is his. This is his. And we were just all sobbing. We're all just so grateful that this page of the big book was found. And then another announcement was made from the director, and the director said, well, we're all so saddened by the death of Jesus, and we know how much the big book meant to him. And it was so awful that that his part of his big book was stolen. But somebody was brave enough and honest enough to find out, somebody found it and was honest and brave and returned it to me so we could give it to Jesus. But I know, as the director, that Jesus would want this person to have his page of the big book. And with that, Sarah, would you please come take this page of the big book? And I literally fell to my knees and wept, like, I am not worthy. How can I have, this is his, this is his. And I just crying, and my tears were like, they were just, it was like making the page of the big book, it started to fall apart because I was just making it so wet with my tears. And then I heard my name being called, and I looked up, and out of the ambulance came this, you can't make this up. This was my second gift from God, this dream. The first one was me being drowned in alcohol. This was my second dream that was a gift from God. And this light came out from the back of the ambulance, and it took a hard left. And I looked up, and I heard my name again, and I saw this white, like just this tunnel of light coming right at me, and I wasn't afraid. And I just watched, and I watched it. And then I heard a voice say to me, Sarah, I have forgiven you. I have always forgiven you. I have always loved you. It's time for you to forgive yourself, and it's time for you to love yourself. And I woke up in tears. I just was blown away, because I honestly, like I said, I never thought much about Jesus. And then I was given this dream. And I woke and I was sobbing because I felt like I had lost a friend, somebody I loved so dearly. And I felt like I fell in love with you. It was just the most profound experience. So from that moment, I was on like this new path to figure out in sobriety, what was this meaning of this dream? I knew, I said, learn how to forgive and love yourself. Okay, so show me what to do. Show me what to do. What do I do with this? I was just unraveling, and I didn't know what to do. I just didn't. And so I kept hearing the voice of Jesus calling my name. And the director of the show saying, this person was brave and honest, because, I really didn't know how to be honest. I didn't know what being honest with myself meant. So I was on a path of like this longing to understand the big book. So I would go to big book meetings. I would go and I just kept trying to learn about the big book, learn about the big book, learn about the big book, still trying to figure out this dream. Things were getting better in my life, but I was still just like, I was working with a spiritual director. I was like, what is this dream about? What do I need to do more in the church? What is this? I'm so confused. And I was like I was really trying to control everything. I was like, what is this? What is this? And so I just kind of put it on the shelf for a while. And I just dove back into my program. I started to think about doing some blogging, and I started writing, and then that's when I wrote about my dream. And then I'm like, forget it, this isn't working. I'm going to keep doing my service work. That's where I feel closest to God. And when I go into the detox, into the rehab. And then I started a social media account. It was started out as Unexpectedly Authentic. That was my first Instagram name. And a couple people asked me to be on their podcast. And then one was Carmel Pally. She was the first one from Canada. Love her. She's a dear friend of mine. And she said, you know, you'd be good at this. You'd be good at doing. Oh, no way. And last year in November, so around this time, all of a sudden, like, because I kept thinking like this podcast, like I'm like, I want to do more. I need to do more. There's more I need to do. Like, it's like nothing was enough for me. Like I was giving, and like I was trying to find, like, there was like an itch I couldn't scratch. And so I'm like, this podcast name came into my head, and I just started this podcast. Sober Gratitudes, because I really had been becoming so grateful, and I was learning the word, what that word meant. Like, I never really knew what that word meant until I got sober. And I used the word all the time. And so I felt like sobriety was what brought me to that word. So that's why Sober Gratitudes is really just so, it's like my mission, like it's like my spiritual mission to to have people have the experience of using the podcast as a platform to share their stories. Because people come to me saying, I want to help somebody. I want to be on your podcast and I want to help somebody. I'm like, this is what I've been wanting. This is, I feel like, okay, like I felt like my recovery was a unfolding more and more and more, and it was just the incredible. And I didn't want, I wasn't looking to make money. I'm still not. It's not about that. It really is just about this community. The people that I met, Brad was, I think, my third interview, and I was so nervous. I don't know what the heck I was doing, but I was just trusting God. You know, I was just trusting what, you know, that voice was telling me. And then COVID came along. And I had one of my guests, he's also on social media, and he wrote the Sarcastic Big Book. And I didn't know he was a guy. I saw his account, thought he was pretty funny. I thought, wow, he knows a lot about the big book. And here we are going back to the big book. So I reached out to what I thought was a woman, because he's so anonymous. There's this one picture of a girl, and she's holding the Sarcastic Big Book up like this. And so you can't, and I'm like, oh, that must be her. Like, she wrote the Sarcastic Big Book. What a great gal. She's funny. She really knows the big book. I got to get her on my podcast. So I texted, and then, you know, I'm Sarah, and just, oh yeah, I know you're Sarah, because you're, you know, I saw on your Instagram. I'm like, well, what's your name? And he said, Clay. I'm like, you're a dude? I'm like, what the heck? And then we talked, and he came on my podcast, and it was great. And then I'm like, God, this is an amazing person. He knows so much about the big book. And then so that was before COVID. And then COVID happened, and I got a text in June, and it was from Clay. And he said, I'm starting a big book study. Do you want to come on the big book study? And I just was like, yes, Effing yes. And he had people from like kind of like around the world, and it was a small group, and it was in July, and it was the first time I went through the big book as it's designed, as it's been laid out by God, who I truly believe God, big book. And that's my feeling. And I finally understood step 3. And I did a thorough inventory. I got out of the driver's seat. God is my director. Then I understood that in my dream, the director was God. And I found out I didn't even think that for 5.5 years. Never put that together. So I went through the bait book as it's laid out. Finally, I did it thoroughly, and I made a thorough amends with my husband. And my husband, who is not an alcoholic, observed me going through this process. And he asked to go on the next go around, the start from scratch. And my husband went through the 12 steps. And he is not an alcoholic. And he too has had a profound psychic change. And our marriage has had a profound psychic change. In October 27th, we'll celebrate 19 years of marriage. And we finally have healed. Not that we were miserable, but it was like there was something between us that just wasn't right, that we had to fix, and we couldn't figure it out. And I kept saying, I'm like, I know, I was afraid, all these fears, you're going to divorce me when the kids get older. And he's like, oh, I think you're going to divorce me when the kids get older. But we cleaned up the wreckage of our past, and we made thorough amends to each other. We made amends to other people, like true amends. Our 5th steps were effing incredible. I had an experience that was just, I felt I was rocketed into the 4th dimension. I read that first in the big book, I'm like, that's a little weird, when I first read that. But the experience I had in July, I had an experience that has rocketed me into the 4th dimension. And I thought at first, maybe this is a pink cloud that's going to go away, but it hasn't gone away. And yeah, I still have shitty days. There's days that are like, I'm scared. But you know what? I just can say, God, remove this fear, because this fear is so selfish. I am not thinking of anyone else but myself when I'm in fear. When I'm in anxiety, I'm not thinking of anyone else but myself when I'm in anxiety. When I'm worried about how the world doesn't look the way I want it to look, I'm in self, because I'm trying to be the director of the show. I am trying to direct how things should look. And I'm miserable because nothing's going the way I want it to look. And I get resentful, and then I drink, and then I die. Because as we know, resentment is the #1 offender of relapse. I had this experience 1 month before I celebrated 8 years of sobriety. And now I'm even more excited to live a sober life, because I've had this experience. I know what it means to be free of the bondage of self, and to get a step away from trying to control everything and everyone. And I'm no longer in collision and conflict with everything and everyone, because when I'm in that state, I'm absolutely miserable. And there's so many people on this planet, and I don't need to control everyone on this planet because God's got them. God's got them covered. And I've got my higher power. My husband's got his. My children have theirs. My family has their. You all have your higher powers. However you think of me is your whatever. I never take anything personally. I only take acts of love and kindness personally, because I know if somebody says anything to me that's mean, or I hear of somebody speaking poorly of me, which hasn't happened in a while, thank God, but I know it has nothing to do with me. It really has nothing to do with me. And I've just been free. I had a taste of the steps, but I have a full, like, I've swallowed the steps, and they're just the design for living is in the big book, and I can use it as when I'm being a parent. My husband and I we can look at each other, and we can say, we can check in with each other, and he says, I'm kind of nervous that Ryan isn't doing what he needs to do for the college application. And I'm like, honey, wait a minute. I feel fear. I feel fear. And he goes, you're right. Let's step back. He's like, let's talk about this. We got to talk about this before I talk to him. And we work together, and we take out the fear. And we're like, what is this? What are we trying to do here? We can't control our son. He wants to steer the ship. He wants to be the one who's applying to colleges. We can't tell him what he needs to major in. We can't tell him what schools to. This needs to be his journey. And we know he has a higher power. That's where our autistic children, it has made being a sober mom, having done the steps through the big book, has made me a much better autism mom, and it has healed my relationship with my youngest son, Cameron, who I always kind of was hoping he would turn out a certain way, and he is who he is, and I accept it. And he's a child of God, and I'm a child of God, and I know God loves me, and I know God loves my sons, and I know God loves all of you. So I love all of you. And I know I was all over the place, and I talked so long, so much longer than I meant to, but God's in control here. And I just want to thank you for letting me share my authentic experience in the program, in my journey in sobriety, that my life is so much better today because I do not have the obsession to drink. Every morning I wake up so grateful that that obsession has been lifted, and that today I go to bed sober, grateful that I had the opportunity to share my story with you all. And hopefully something that I said today may have resonated with somebody and helped somebody today, because that's really all I want to do, is help those that are suffering and struggling, body, mind, and spirit. And I guess that's it. That's all I have to share for tonight. And I just want to thank you again for having me on your amazing AA group. Brad and Daphne, you guys are incredible what you're doing. I just think it's fantastic. And thank you all for listening to me.